The wind had begun to turn colder that evening, the kind that found the seams in your coat and traced a cold finger down your spine. People hurried past, their faces buried in scarves, their thoughts already home. They were ghosts in the twilight, blind to the woman who stood shivering by the curb. She was a small, elderly woman, wrapped in a beige coat that had seen better decades. Silver hair escaped from a simple woolen hat, and her gloved hands clutched a worn leather purse. She would step toward the street, peering into the distance as if searching for a familiar car, only to shuffle back, a fresh wave of confusion clouding her soft, blue eyes. She murmured to herself about a street name that didn't exist in this part of town, her voice a fragile whisper lost to the wind. Not far away, leaning against the cold brick of a laundromat, was a young woman named Maya. At 22, she wore her exhaustion like a second coat. Her maid's uniform was hidden beneath a thin jacket, and her worn-out sneakers were a testament to the miles she walked each day. After a 12-hour shift cleaning a house where she was treated as invisible, all Maya wanted was to catch the 7:45 bus, the last one that went to her neighborhood, and fall into bed. Missing it meant a 2-hour walk in the biting cold. She was about to push off the wall and head for the stop when her gaze fell upon the old woman. She saw the repetitive, lost motion, the slight tremble in her shoulders. It wasn't the posture of someone waiting, it was the posture of someone who had forgotten where they were supposed to be. Maya's feet felt rooted to the pavement. The bus was due in 10 minutes. Her own fatigue was a heavy weight, screaming at her to just keep walking, to mind her own business. But then a gust of wind carried the old woman's voice across the sidewalk, faint but clear. Rosewood Court, or maybe it was, a garden. The words were laced with a quiet panic that resonated deep in Maya's chest. Without making a conscious decision, she found herself walking over. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said gently, keeping her voice soft. "Are you all right?" The woman blinked at her, her eyes unfocused. "I was trying to get home," she said, her voice thin as winter ice. "But I think the bus forgot about me." She gave a small, brittle laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Maya's heart ached with a familiar pang of sympathy. "Where do you live? Maybe I can help you find your way." The woman fumbled with her purse, her hands shaking as she pulled out a lipstick, a crumpled tissue, and a few old receipts, but no ID or address. Maya felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The bus would be here any minute. Just then, her eyes caught the glint of a delicate silver chain around the woman's neck. Tucked just inside her coat was a small, oval locket. "Ma'am, may I see your necklace?" Maya asked softly. The woman nodded, her expression trusting. Maya carefully lifted the locket. On the back, engraved in elegant script, were the words, "Eleanor Davenport, 112, Crestview Drive." Maya's breath hitched. Crestview Drive. She knew the area from a one-time cleaning job. It was on the other side of the city, a place of sprawling mansions and manicured lawns, miles away from any bus route. It was a world away from here. The sound of the bus approaching rumbled in the distance. This was her choice. Her warm bed versus this stranger's safety. She looked at Eleanor's clouded, fearful eyes and saw a loneliness that felt ancient and profound. She knew she couldn't leave her. Some things were more important than comfort. "Crestview Drive is quite a ways from here," Maya said, forcing a reassuring smile. "The buses don't go out that far. But don't you worry. I'll get you home." She pulled out her phone. The ride-sharing app showed a fare of $47. Maya looked at her bank balance, $53.16. That was her grocery money for the rest of the week. She swallowed hard and confirmed the ride. While they waited, the bus she was supposed to be on hissed to a stop, its doors opening like an invitation to a life she was choosing to postpone. It pulled away without her, its red taillights disappearing into the gloom. A car pulled up a few minutes later, and Maya helped the frail woman into the back seat. The ride was mostly quiet. Eleanor hummed an old, meandering tune and occasionally pointed out the window at passing lights, her confusion having melted into a placid calm. She seemed content just to have someone beside her. "You have kind eyes," she said at one point, her gaze surprisingly clear for a moment. "Like my son. He always took in stray cats." Maya just smiled and nodded. When they finally turned onto Crestview Drive, it was like entering another country. Grand houses sat behind iron gates, their windows glowing with warm, golden light. The car pulled up to number 112, a stone mansion that looked more like a museum than a home. As Maya helped Eleanor out of the car, the front door swung open. A tall, impeccably dressed man in his 60s rushed out, his face a mask of frantic relief. "Mrs. Davenport." "Oh, thank heavens. We've been calling the police. Where have you been?" Eleanor blinked, looking at her home as if seeing it for the first time. "I went for a walk," she said vaguely, then smiled at Maya. "This nice girl brought me home." The man, who introduced himself as Arthur, the house manager, thanked Maya profusely, his voice thick with emotion. "Please, come inside. Let us give you a ride home, at the very least. We are deeply in your debt." Maya, feeling out of place and exhausted, simply shook her head. "No, thank you. I'm just glad she's safe." Before Arthur could insist, she quickly told him her name and the agency she worked for, just in case they needed to confirm anything. Then, she turned and began the long walk back into the city, the gates of Crestview Drive closing softly behind her. The cold night air felt sharper now, and each step was a reminder of the long journey ahead. She was tired, she was cold, and her fridge would be empty tomorrow, but her heart felt strangely light. The next morning, Maya was on her hands and knees, scrubbing the marble floors of the Henderson residence. It was her regular Tuesday job, a place of silent demands and critical glances. Mrs. Henderson liked her floors to gleam, her silver to shine, and her maid to remain unheard and unseen. Maya worked methodically, her muscles aching from the long walk home the night before. She was polishing the grand entryway mirror when she saw it, a sleek, black sedan, the kind that whispered of old money and quiet power, pulling silently into the driveway. It didn't belong here. A moment later, Arthur, the man from the mansion, stepped out. He was holding a small, tasteful bouquet of flowers. He rang the doorbell. Mrs. Henderson answered, her expression shifting from annoyance to curiosity. "Good morning," Arthur said, his voice calm and professional. "I'm looking for a Miss Maya. I was told she works here." Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows shot up. She turned and stared at Maya, who was now standing awkwardly with a polishing cloth in her hand. "Her? What could you possibly want with her?" "Mrs. Eleanor Davenport has requested her presence," Arthur said, his tone polite but unyielding. "She would like to thank her in person for her kindness last night." Maya felt her face flush as Mrs. Henderson's suspicious gaze bore into her. Shaking slightly, she followed Arthur out to the car, leaving her employer speechless in the doorway. The drive back to Crestview Drive was surreal. In the daylight, the mansion seemed even more imposing, yet the gardens were beautiful, filled with late-blooming roses. Arthur led her into a bright, sun-filled sitting room. There, seated in a comfortable armchair with a book in her lap, was Eleanor. Today, she was entirely different. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, her silver hair was elegantly styled, and she wore a simple but expensive silk blouse. The fog of confusion was gone, replaced by a warm, commanding presence. She smiled as Maya entered, a genuine, brilliant smile that transformed her face. "There you are," she said, her voice rich and clear. "Please, sit down." She gestured to the chair opposite her. "I owe you a profound apology," Eleanor began. "And an even more profound thank you. I have episodes sometimes, moments where the world becomes a puzzle I can't solve. Yesterday was one of the bad ones. Arthur told me what you did. You sacrificed your time and your money to see a lost stranger home safely. You asked for nothing in return." Maya shifted in her seat, uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone would have done it, she murmured. No, Eleanor said firmly, her eyes locked on Maya's. They wouldn't. I stood at that bus stop for nearly an hour. Dozens of people walked by. They saw an old, confused woman and looked away. You saw a person who needed help. That is a rare and precious quality. She leaned forward. Arthur told me which agency you work for. He also told me they have a reputation for overworking and underpaying their employees. That is not a life for someone with a heart like yours. I would like to offer you a job, here, as my personal companion. The hours would be fair, the pay would be more than generous, and you would have a home here, if you wish. Maya was stunned into silence. The offer was a lifeline, a fantasy she couldn't have dared to dream. But something held her back. It felt like charity, a reward for a simple act of decency. Ma'am, that's incredibly kind of you, Maya said, finding her voice. But I can't accept. I didn't help you to get a reward. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. Eleanor's smile didn't falter. She seemed to have expected this. And that, she said softly, is precisely why I am offering. This isn't a reward, my dear. It's an investment. I am a very good judge of character. Maya still hesitated, the habit of refusing help deeply ingrained. She politely declined again, thanked Eleanor for her time, and asked Arthur to take her back to the Hendersons' house to finish her shift. That evening, as Maya was preparing a meager dinner of rice and beans in her tiny apartment, there was a knock on her door. It was Arthur again. This time, he held a simple, sealed envelope. Mrs. Davenport insisted, he said with a small smile. She is not a woman who gives up easily. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter from Eleanor. It wasn't an offer of employment. It was an invitation. She wrote about her loneliness in the big house, about her estranged family, and about the spark of hope Maya's simple kindness had ignited in her. She didn't offer a job, she offered a partnership. I am starting a charitable foundation, the letter read. To help people who are overlooked, the elderly who get lost, the young who struggle without support. I have the resources, but I have lost the connection. You have that connection. Come work with me, not for me. Help me build this. Your salary will be that of an executive director. Your first task will be to design a program that ensures no one in this city ever feels as lost as I did. Tears welled in Maya's eyes as she read the words. This wasn't charity. This was a purpose. This was a chance to turn her own compassion into something that could change hundreds of lives. The next morning, she called the cleaning agency and quit. Then, she called Arthur and, with a voice full of emotion, said, "Please tell Mrs. Davenport that I accept." Life at the mansion was a quiet revelation. Maya moved into a beautiful suite of rooms overlooking the gardens. But more importantly, she and Eleanor became a formidable team. They spent their days drafting plans, meeting with community leaders, and establishing the Rosewood Foundation, named for the street Eleanor had been trying to remember. Maya blossomed. Her quiet empathy became her greatest strength as she designed programs that treated people with dignity and respect. She hadn't just been given a new life, she had been given the chance to build one, for herself and for countless others. Sometimes, on her days off, Maya would take the bus to her old neighborhood. She would stand by the stop where she first saw Eleanor, watching people hurry by, lost in their own worlds. She would smile, a quiet, knowing smile. Home wasn't a place you arrived at. It was something you built, often for someone else, only to find you had built it for yourself all along. All it took was the courage to stop, to see, and to offer a hand in the dark.